Hello and welcome. This is Dirty Saxophone, and today I have a video for you talking about one of my favorite video game franchises, or maybe just one of my favorite video games of all time, all things considered. In 2018 or 19, don't quite remember, I was scrolling through the available games on the Xbox Marketplace and I found Monster Hunter World. I downloaded it on a whim and my gaming life changed completely, just as much as it did when I first played Fallout 3. Ever since, I've gone on to become a Souls-like enthusiast, playing my first real Souls-like with Elden Ring and then the original Hollow Knight. Some people might not think Hollow Knight is a Souls game. It's called a 2D Souls, but that's a video for another time. But I never finished Hollow Knight. Silksong, on the other hand, I did finish. It was a must when it released, and it has since served as the catalyst to double down on my interests as a content creator. I wouldn't be making videos if it wasn't for Silksong at this point. But let's begin. And as I tend to say in all of my videos, I'm new to content creation and I still have a lot to learn about video structure and speaking to an audience in general. So please bear with me as I get good. When I jumped into Monster Hunter World and chose the switch axe as my weapon, my previous experience with games where I swung a sword around involved a Devil May Cry and brace for this one, Fallout 3, where I mained the shish kebab for a vast majority of my playthroughs. I can't stress enough just how daunting, maybe even downright offensive it was for the moveset for weapons in World to be so meticulously calculated in terms of motion values. The more I swung about with reckless abandon, the more World slapped me to the floor. Like any other new fan, I thought the controls were clunky, but that was because I had no idea that the combat in the Monster Hunter game was more like a puzzle, but in motion, than any other game I'd played previously. But having played all of my prior games on hard mode for the most part, made me determined and I pushed and pushed. I started slinging flash pods about, I abused the mounting mechanics, and I used up my sword gauge during combos, and I just tanked through the damage whenever a monster hit me for getting stuck in that forced animation. That was enough for a long time, even though monsters like Tobi Kadachi legit forced me to consider if whether I was as good as I thought I was or not. Then I hit Arch-Tempered Xeno'jiiva, a monster tuned for genuine difficulty, and who it took 2 whole weeks for me to defeat. Arch-Tempered Zeno was the first time I noticed what is called the dance. Zeno was the kind of monster that was difficult enough that you have to learn every one of its attacks and you have to familiarize yourself with every one of the tells for these attacks so that you can respond to all of it within the confines of your own moveset. You also had to build the proper damage set, otherwise you wouldn't slay it in the allotted amount of time. I was a changed hunter after this experience, but then I went out and started hacking and slashing all the other monsters again anyway, because few of them required that much practice, that much ability, and that much learning. And then eventually I landed on Behemoth. Long story short, I built a support set with sword and shield because I thought that was what was necessary, but on one fateful day while searching for someone to fulfill the tank role, I encountered a fellow who mained the switch axe who confidently said he could tank. Given that I was a Swax main, I questioned the metrics because the switch axe doesn't have a shield, this much I know. Aside from that, I didn't know anything about iframes at this point, which was very important to tanking, and much to my surprise, he did it and we cleared the quest, and that was when I realized that it was possible to tank with my main weapon. But not only was it possible to tank, it was also possible to solo this thing. Turned out this person was a speedrunner. Upon discovering that, I locked myself out of multiplayer and dedicated the next few weeks to soloing Behemoth, and I did it. It took longer than AT Zeno, but I did it. This was when I acquired a better understanding of the fact that the switch axe, actually likely all weapons in the game, were really complex and had a massive skill ceiling, unlike in any other game I'd ever played. To this day that remains true, even after playing other difficult games like Elden Ring and Silksong. I remain convinced that in terms of weapon complexity, gameplay complexity in general, nothing beats Monster Hunter. The level of skill that I developed with the switch axe over the following years filled me with a sense of pride that I would personally compare to musical instruments. I've never played any musical instruments before, but the switch axe made me feel really accomplished. The fact that society would likely point the finger and laugh at me for feeling this way is pretty much just fuel at this point. The switch axe was pure art in my eyes. I loved its identity. It was a weapon built to be in constant motion, moving from axe to sword, sword to axe depending on your gauge or what the monster was doing. When my controller rumbled because the sword had entered amp mode, the dopamine rush was insane, and even more so whenever I used the ZSD. Wild Morph has one axe swing that hits particularly hard, and legit I think one of the reasons I was born at all into this world is to land that hit, or to get topples with it. The rest is history, but in the time since, I've scrutinized other games that are balanced meticulously for difficulty like this, and comparing them has brought me a lot of joy. In fact, I plan to make videos in regards to that fairly soon, but getting back to the topic at hand, Monster Hunter World came to an end for me 3,000 hours plus, and then Rise released on the Switch. Considering I didn't have a Switch and I didn't want one either, I experienced Rise largely through content creators, but after learning about it from them and hearing about it from friends who played it after playing World with me, I fell more towards the side that didn't like what Rise was doing to the franchise. That didn't stop me from buying a Switch anyway and playing it after, eventually. Seeing it released on Xbox later on was infuriating, but that's neither here nor there. But in giving Rise a chance, I found that Capcom had done some wonderful things with the entry that really made me excited to see the next mainline entry. Having named characters was one fantastic improvement. My background in RPGs made me thirsty for the greater story depth that comes with named characters. Being able to bring some of those named characters on hunts and for them to have dialogue that revealed their personalities was also a welcome improvement. Getting lore drops on them from that Palico that liked to gossip about the townsfolk was another nice touch. I even liked the telepathic connection that the Kimura twins had with Narwa and Ibushi, because I find the lore behind the Wyverians pretty fascinating. They come off as though they're more in tune with their instinctual side, like animals, and so an instinctual connection to Narwa and Ibushi that seems like magic to humans in the game and to us as the player audience, or just supernatural in general, seemed really appropriate to me. The gameplay itself wasn't as good, I thought, as World, but not as bad as I imagined it would be either. The maps were built to be traversed best via the Wirebug and the Palamute, which encroached on my preference to traverse on foot, a penchant that I had developed when I was playing World. I also played without Palico in World, so in getting rid of both options in Rise left me playing a game that hadn't quite been built for me, which was fine because that was my choice ultimately. Meanwhile, the Switch Axe moveset had been changed. I did enjoy being able to customize some of my attacks, but being able to go into sword mode from stationary I felt took away from its identity. Again, mastering maintaining constant motion in terms of movement and attacking was the Switch Axe's identity, and while it wasn't removed entirely, I felt like a piece of it had been ripped away completely. But that's been happening in every sequel, with veterans of the previous game complaining about the next release each and every time, so I just had to decide at that point that it is what it is. Once Sunbreak rolled around, however, and they added the elemental burst counter to the Switch Axe, I checked out. During World, I was empathetic towards arguments that the counters given to the longsword were a little much, and it made me a little prideful that the Switch Axe didn't have a mechanic like that. So I played Sunbreak up until a certain point and then just quit, and I exchanged it for Pokemon Snap before retiring my Switch altogether and fantasizing about setting it on fire after Rise was released on Xbox. Flash forward to Wilds, and lo and behold, all of my previous hopes that the combat wouldn't be as fast as in Rise went out the window. I watched speedrunners spamming full release slash and alternating with the offset and the part break over and over until the monster was dead. Iceborne hurt when higher damage output of the ZSD led to players spamming it with Rocksteady and Temporal Mantle, but this new playstyle had no soul in my eyes, and largely it still doesn't. And I do admit that I feel the need to go in and just get good at it before I fully move on. I generally, before I pass judgment or before I make reviews, actual, honest, full, dedicated reviews about anything, I generally like to experience the whole thing before I do. So Most likely, eventually, I will be on Wilds. So I quit that game as soon as I got done slaying Chemetries. I've been telling myself that I'll go get good at it before I quit proper eventually, but I haven't been able to muster up the gumption. But these days I spend a lot of time following the news. I watch other people play on occasion, I consume positive and negative takes on the game, and I see value in both sides. I see players who dislike the game going to streams to voice their opinions in non-constructive ways. Legit, these folks just spawn in and toss up a haphazard Wilds is garbage statement, and then they just wait and see what happens. That might not be the worst case scenario. In some cases, they'll decry something the devs have actually addressed already, like the underwhelming amount of content that Wilds released. Not everybody seems to believe that Wilds didn't have that much content. At this point though, it's intentionally baseless, and the idea is to provoke others and nothing more. There's nothing wrong with criticizing a game you don't like. Personally, I believe Reddit and the comments in YouTube are all fair game, regardless of whether the YouTube video is praising or criticizing the game or not. If you put your opinions out into the world in video form and it's public domain, be prepared for some disagreements. Streams, however, that's when it becomes questionable, especially if I perfectly described your technique earlier. Recently, Bellular, a gaming news channel on YouTube, released a video titled "Capcom Got What They Deserved." As if that title alone isn't enough to sprain your index finger rushing to click the video, the thumbnail states the sales rate for Wilds has dropped to 98%, and it's backed with an image of everyone's favorite Wilds waifu. What's her... the blonde one? Alma is the black-haired one. I forget her name, honestly. Considering the generally incendiary state of the Monster Hunter community right now though, this is bound to piss someone off, and it really did. But this is by far one of my favorite videos ever now because it pissed everyone off. People who love Wilds find Bellular guilty of using clickbait titles now. I even got vibes that folks believe his opinion is that of a casual fan, largely unfamiliar to the history and nature of the supremely niche Monster Hunter franchise. Meanwhile, people who hate Wilds, like me, were pissed off that he didn't trash Wilds for failing to bring a lot of the great things from both of its predecessors, nor did he mention that Wilds has legit betrayed the identity of the Monster Hunter franchise altogether. Sorry, I'm being a little overdramatic here for comedic purposes. Instead, he spouted absolute nonsense that the reason Wilds isn't selling well right now is because perhaps Wilds has already reached his audience. Remember, this game sold over 10 million copies. Everyone who wanted this game, and those who didn't want it as well actually, such as myself, already have it in their library. I know I said this was nonsense, but it actually isn't. This is pure, unadulterated neutrality towards a subject, and it's the perfect way to get a look at how utterly garbage both sides of this garbage coin are. This video is more about attacking Capcom corporate for what they've done to Wilds, putting it into position to struggle with optimization first and foremost. Everybody agrees on that, but the reception to the video wouldn't seem to reflect that, because people get defensive immediately in both directions. I went ahead and watched some of Bellular's previous videos on Wilds as well, and he legit notes that the amount of content in Wilds has been improved. Never mind that though, the video title and the thumbnail are just too much. So I don't like Wilds as it stands right now. I still have to go and play it, but the discussion surrounding it has been some of the most riveting content I've ever experienced. Just like when Fallout 76 dropped, and even when Fallout 4 dropped, there was a lot of very interesting discussion to be had. Silksong right now is also a very engaging topic. So either way, one day eventually, most likely, I'm going to play Wilds. My opinion on World is a little skewed though, because I played that one close to a year post-release, so my memories of it would have a clear advantage over Wilds for sure, if I had played it in the beginning fully all the way through. But I never finished the Wild storyline, and we're close to a year into it as well now, so this is the perfect time to try it and generate a fair outlook on it. That'll wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe. If you didn't, hit the dislike and hit up the comments to let me know why. I'm always in the market for constructive criticism. Hope you enjoyed as much as I enjoyed. See you on the next one.